There's nowhere else I'm gonna start than the NFL draft, which we talked about this last week. We talked about it leading into the NFL draft, all the crazy rumors, all the smoke screens, all the stories, players value going up, player value going down. Here we are, it's done, it's complete. Let's bring it up on the screen so we can talk about this. Actually, let's go a little more full screen for you guys. Bryce Young went number 1 overall. I feel like this was the obvious route. CJ Stroud actually went number 2, and this is where all the smoke screen stuff started coming in right around pick 2 here. Because pick 1, it was a little outlandish, but the Will Levis storyline is what I'm talking about. We'll get to that in a second. But Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, Will Anderson. Yes, the Texans traded back up into the first round to get Will Anderson. Anthony Richardson ended up going number 4 to the Colts, and then Devon Witherspoon went number 5. Kind of a surprise pick to people. Paris Johnson went number 6. The Raiders went with Tyree Wilson, defensive end. Bijan Robinson was a Falcons pick at number 8. Jalen Carter went number 9 to the Eagles. And to round out the top 10, Darnell Wright went to the Bears. So this is how the top 10 shook out. If we just, continue to look down there, some of in terms of like, I wouldn't say any surprises. I guess Christian Gonzalez falling to the Patriots is perfect for the Patriots, right? At 17. I think he definitely went further down than we thought he would. Nobody expected that. Then a few wide receivers started going here. And for those who are involved in fantasy and DFS, you care about stuff like this. You got, JSN going to the Seahawks, Quentin Johnson going to the Chargers. They like big, strong, physical wide receivers there. They got a certain mold, and they draft them every single time. He's going to be an interesting pairing with Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. That'll be, interesting to see. I guess they figure, more weapons to keep up with, the Chiefs and try to win the Super Bowl here. Give Herbert some more weapons. Zay Flowers went to the Ravens. Obviously, I mean, they're just going to try to load up that offense at this point for Lamar Jackson. Jordan Addison went to the Vikings, and that was where the wide receiver run ended. A lot of edge guys, defensive tackles here around at the end of the draft. It was a fun draft, right? And this is a draft going into it that a lot of people felt like there wasn't a ton of, top end talent. Like they felt like it goes from really, really good to just okay, really talented, great, but not the elite level, right? They felt like that tapered off really quick. And so it's no surprise to see those guys go at the top of the draft. You heard a lot of people thinking quarterbacks won't go this early. This won't be this many quarterbacks. It's never this many quarterbacks. But in this case, it was a lot of the quarterbacks. The only thing that didn't happen quarterback wise was the whole Will Levis, watching him free fall out of the first round. You had the cameras keep panning to him. Here he is dropping and dropping and dropping. He actually didn't show up to the second day of the draft. But as we look here, the second day of the draft is where he actually was drafted. He got drafted by the Titans, who had a interesting draft, to say the least, with a couple of their prospects that they drafted. Michael Mayer went to the Raiders. A couple of tight ends there, to start off the second round. Joey Porter, I love Joey Porter, so that was a good pick by the Steelers. He was another guy who, many didn't expect to fall out of the first round. He'll be motivated by it. His dad played in the NFL. He played for the Steelers. This isn't going to be a big problem for him, but it may be a motivating factor for him. We'll see how that goes. Jonathan Mingo went to the Panthers to try to help out Bryce Young and that offense. Some other players here. Let's see what else we got. Jaden Reed to the Packers. They finally drafted a wide receiver somewhat early. Now they got a couple of young wide receivers for Jordan Love, right? I mean, when you think about Romeo, Watson, Reed in there. So they got some decent young weapons there. And Marvin Mims, rounded out the second round. It was just again, really, really, really top heavy, group at the top. But outside of that top group, I think you're getting a lot of value, throughout the different rounds. I'm interested to see how some of these quarterbacks, end up panning out for some of these teams, just because in terms of, you had the top end quarterbacks, but I think, the Hendon Hookers of the world are interesting, to see how they develop, how quickly they get a chance. It was a weird spot for them to go, right? Like the Lions is a weird spot for Hooker to go to, especially when you consider the fact that they may re-sign Goff for longer. And if you do re-sign Goff for longer, why did you draft an older quarterback? And I say older in terms of like as prospects coming out, Hooker is considered an older quarterback. It kind of annoys me in terms of as a Hooker fan, that sounds crazy if people are out of context on this. As a Hendon Hooker fan, it seems crazy. But Jake Hayner went to the Saints. Funny that he's gonna be backing up Derek Carr. I think that's a really cool storyline. O'Connell went to the Raiders. As a Raider fan, we needed a young quarterback. I'll take it. At that point, I'll take any young quarterback to develop. You know how the Raiders are, like to develop, quarterbacks. Josh McDaniels, that's what he does. I won't say the Raiders. Josh McDaniels likes to develop quarterbacks. And so that'll be an interesting one to see what he does with it. And, overall, again, not a lot of headlines or storylines coming out of the draft, lots of decent amount of trades, especially that Texans one early on. It really set the tone. It was like, okay, we didn't see that one coming. And it's I seen someone mention that it was like the GM getting his quarterback and the head coach getting his defensive player. I'm not crazy about the trade, to be honest with you. I wouldn't be happy if my team did it, but I understand, they're looking to rejuvenate this team. They probably feel we got the two best players in the draft, which is technically possible. I'd love to see how Anthony Richardson plays out for the Colts. I'm really excited for Anthony Richardson. But overall, just in the grand scheme of things, the draft wasn't, I don't want to say lackluster, but it just didn't have a lot of splashes happening or a lot of, headlines and narratives and storylines. I think the Will Levis thing going in was one of the biggest headlines, and then going out one of the biggest headlines, right? A lot of feel good stories, a lot of great stuff. You've seen Vaughn with the Cowboys, and he got to draft his son. That was pretty cool. So stuff like that is always, and it happens almost every draft where there's some cool heartwarming, heartfelt moment. We'll see how all these guys play out. I think if we're talking about fantasy and we're talking about DFS, Rashawn Robinson to the Falcons makes things, really interesting there in terms of the Falcons love to run the ball. Their head coach has a very strong history of running the ball a ton. Gibbs in Detroit, I like it even more after they traded Swift. Before they traded Swift, it was kind of confusing. You're like, what is going on here with the Lions? Why are they drafting a running back at 12? Even not, even with Swift or not, drafting running backs early is always questionable for a lot of people because they feel like they're easily replaceable. They, fade quicker than other positions. Gibbs should do good in Detroit. If I'm drafting today, I would likely pay the Gibbs price before I would pay the Bajan price. That's just how I'm, where I'm at with it. Overall, if you're going into your fantasy drafts, who are you excited about of the rookies? If you're going into a fantasy football draft today, which one of these rookies really gets you excited? It doesn't have to be one of the top, early drafted rookies. It could be a guy who got drafted in the middle of the rounds that you feel is a sleeper that you want to get in all your leagues. Let us know in the comments before we jump off of this topic. Let us know in the comments who your favorite rookie drafted for fantasy purposes is, whether it's, daily fantasy sports or fantasy football, who you feel like you're going to use, you're going to, draft them, you're going to end up putting them in your DFS lineups, whatever the case is. Let us know which rookie on offense you're most excited about. Again, I love, chopping this stuff up with you guys and discussing with you guys and seeing, who you guys are really into in terms of from a fantasy football perspective. Those conversations probably get the most, interesting in the comments. So definitely drop that there.